And now, The Good, the Bad, and the Weird presents...
Board game movies and video game movies.
And why they suck.
Yeah.
Most of them are bad, let's be real.
Yes. So we are doing a spotlight. We haven't done one in a while, and I almost forgot we have a different intro for this type of episode.
Yep, same.
So yeah, when we watched Clue, we kind of had this... We wanted to talk about board game movies.
Because it is a whole genre.
It is, but it's a very limited genre. And we were thinking by extension, especially with like Jumanji coming out.
The new one.
Yes, the new one. We've entered an age where it's more of an interactive media adaptation, I'd say.
Yeah, because I think board games were probably like old-timey video games in a way.
Yeah.
They're a game, they can be co-op, they can be single player, they waste a shit ton of time, and I'm sure someone's parents have complained a lot about both.
Yeah, and the only ones that I can find based off real board games were Clue, Dungeons & Dragons.
Of course.
Battleship, which I've heard is horrible and I have not seen it.
I have seen it, and if you like mecha style anime, you might like Battleship.
We'll see.
It's terrible.
And then I knew of this one tangentially, Warhammer, but I've never gotten into Warhammer, so I never pursued it. And then the one that we had actually talked about a little bit before this episode was Ouija, or Ouija.
All like 3 or 4 movies, because they are all different.
Well,
I think one's a sequel, one's a ripoff, and another one just accidentally was named the same.
And even then, like, specifically licensed ones, because there are so many movies that have Ouija boards. And...
Yes. There is one movie that you did miss.
What's that?
It's old. It's animated. It's Candyland. It is a real thing.
Fascinating.
I do not recommend it. I attempted to watch it, and even I couldn't sit through it.
Yes. Speaking of not being able to watch through anything, Sugi could not get through Shrek the Musical, even though I told him not to watch it.
Don't watch it.
He got like 3 minutes in and quit.
It's bad.
It's bad.
It's bad. But, like, that's part of the joy of that one, is, like, it's bad. So, you know.
Oh, like watching, the Legend of Zelda and Mario shows.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Exactly. Like, you don't watch those because you're going to be invested in the story. You watch them to watch things be on fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so...
But video game movies, those have kind of, like...
Well...
There's a higher number.
Yes, there are. And even with board games, there are some outside of it. Like, I know there's some documentaries on it.
There's so many documentaries on board games.
Those are whatever. I'm more interested in, like, the movies themselves, because, like...
Yeah. The plot based on the board game.
Like, the original Jumanji is probably the pinnacle of board game movies.
Yes.
I'd say even better than Clue.
Oh,
and it's a made-up board game, too.
But that's where it's good. That's what made it successful, I think, is because... I'm sure now there's probably a Jumanji-esque board game, if not Jumanji-themed board game of fill in blank here. But because Jumanji made a movie first, they could make the board game whatever the hell they wanted it to. So it's kind of like a weird mousetrap game / like, honestly, like, what's the actual gameplay of Jumanji? No one really knows.
Rolling the dice and letting the characters move. It's a board game for the most part.
Yeah, but, like, especially board games that, like, have continued on that people don't think of as, like, baby board games, like Candyland and, like, Chutes and Ladders or Snakes and Ladders or whatever you call it. Like, they have some, like, strategy or method to them. Like, Monopoly, there's a bunch of different ways to, like, play the best way ever. There's a bunch of, like, oh, you should buy this slot first, or, like, save up for this way first. Same thing with, like, a bunch of them. Sorry, Uno, like, yeah, they're luck of the cards, but there's... Or at least you can assume and pretend like there's strategy. Jumanji, just, you roll a dice and hope you don't die.
Yeah.
But, like, that makes for a good movie. So...
Well, and I mean, we do kind of have a movie like that. There is a horror film called Die that is like Saw. It's very much a Saw ripoff. And, like, but they roll dice to decide their fate.
Yes. And then, like, we watched either earlier last year or even maybe the year before that. I honestly don't remember. But we watched that, like, rock, paper, scissors based board video.
Oh,
movie,
yeah.
I guess Rock, Paper, Scissors isn't really a board game, but it kind of is.
It's not even that. You're talking about Animal World, the one that your husband was like super in love with and like was trying to convince us it was a great movie.
The one I'm thinking of, like, he sees clowns everywhere.
Yeah, he sees clowns, and it's actually like the cards are rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, it's rock, paper, scissors, like, death match.
Yeah.
It was, I liked it. It's a beautifully entertaining visual movie. Plot's weak.
Yeah, it just didn't hit, like, home for me. Like,
oh, no, fair. Like, visually it was entertaining because there's a lot of, like, roaming colors and, like, trippy scenes. And, like, I liked that the clown wasn't just, like, thrown in for no reason. Like, they attempted to tie the clown into the character a bit.
Yeah.
But, like, that's as, like, again, Rock, Paper, Scissors doesn't have a plot or any, like, yeah, there's strategy to Rock, Paper, Scissors, but, like, you're pretty much picking a card and hoping for the best.
Well,
so you can put plot wherever you want from a movie standpoint.
And so in that regard, then, what about, would you consider, like, 21 a board game movie, or is it a card game movie? Like,
yeah, and there's all those poker movies and movies about people who are card counters. But yeah, like, that's kind of one of those, like, I put all of them in the same category. We're sitting down to play a thing. But I know a lot of people divide the line. They're like, no, card games are different than board games. I don't like board games. I like card games. Yeah. I only play poker with the best of them. Not me. I have no poker face, but, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Video games are kind of a like, there are potential for similar, but most of them come with story built in.
Yeah, so there's a couple things to that for me. So, I'm not going to go through the plethora of video game movie adaptations we have.
Mostly Pokemon.
No, I'm thinking of, like, Resident Evil.
Yeah, there's a lot of Resident Evil. There's a lot of Resident Evil.
Yeah, that's the main one. I mean, we got, like, Assassin's Creed and stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, I think there is a clear distinction as to why video game live actions are more likely to be adapted than a board game.
Sure.
And I think that's part of the issue with why board game movies are less likely, is that there needs to be a certain level of, like, recognizable elements, such as, like, characters, as we saw in Clue.
Yeah, that helped Clue a lot.
Or it has to be... They have to... Because you have to have those characters to put it into a game. That's why, like, Dungeons and Dragons is a good is easily adaptable.
Yes.
But then you get, like, if you wanted to make Risk into a game.
Risk would be a hard one to turn into a movie.
It's just any war movie, then.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it is pretty much just a war movie.
Yeah.
Unless, like, even then, it'd still be, like, a war movie. Yeah. And then we have started to get we've started getting kind of weird with the video game movies. Because originally we had, like, Resident Evil, the Mortal Kombats.
Silent Hill.
Super Mario Bros.
Oh, God, I forgot about that movie.
But we've kind of turned a bit of a corner because our video games are becoming more and more, like, direct plot based.
Yeah.
And so we're starting to see, like, Hitman, Assassin's Creed.
Blood Rain got a movie too that I heard is pretty bad.
Yeah, where, like, the plot's already done, the character's already done. You're really removing things by making it a movie, as opposed to, like, at least when it's a video game, you feel like you have controlling connection to the character.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue with live action video game remakes or adaptations is that, one, they have to contend with already established characters. Yeah. So if you try throwing anything new into it, which is why I think the first Resident Evil actually was so successful, is because it was its own crew. It was like its own movie.
Its own
took place in the same mansion as the first one, but it did its own thing. Then you get to the second one, and it feels very like they were catering to the fanboys and fangirls of, like, just randomly throwing in, like,
it's a lot.
Here's this character, here's Jill Valentine, here's this other character. And
Tomb Raider kind of felt that way to me too.
Well, so I've never actually played a Tomb Raider game. I've seen...
fair.
I've seen the first Angelina Jolie movie, and I recently watched the new one.
I like the Tomb Raider series, don't get me wrong, but, like, and I haven't played every one of the video games. There's a few to get through.
Yeah.
But, like, the Tomb Raider games that I've played, they're very, they're fairly linear as far as, like, go to point B, shoot things.
Yeah.
That sort of gameplay. And, like, I liked it because it felt like I was in control. It's similar to where, like, I have enough control of the character that I feel like I can imagine her triangle boobs to be whatever I want.
Yeah.
And then once she's in a movie, I do lose that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand that too, because I think that is the biggest thing where they fail, is because they're trying to be too much like the video game to appease the fanboys and fangirls, and just like...
Yes.
And they just don't make a good movie. And I think that's the biggest issue, is that they're too focused on making it like the video game.
Yes.
And I think, I honestly admire, even though I'm not a huge fan of the Stephen King movies, I like the way he treats them.
Yeah.
That he treats them as separate entities.
Yeah.
And
they're their own thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, which has always worked well, because let's be real, I haven't read all of the Stephen King books.
Mm-mm.
And I also haven't watched all of the Stephen King films. So when I do, like, bother to read and watch both of the same one, it doesn't really feel like I'm overlapping a bunch of stuff. It feels like a new thing each time.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, especially for ones where it can feel a little bit too repetitive. Mm-hmm. Especially if, like, the plot's not really that diverse.
Yeah.
Like, Hitman? Like, yeah, the details are different. There are parts that are different, but the basic premise...
It's just any assassin movie at that point.
Yeah, like, it's the same as all the others. He just happens to be wearing the suit. And he's bald.
No, exactly. And, I don't know, it's just a weird...
And then you get into the ones where there's too much to put into a movie.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy being a good example.
I was going to bring that up because, and even then, I have questions. I actually wonder
you have questions about that movie? Because me too.
I have many questions. I recently rewatched The Spirit Within, and
I'm so sorry.
God, is it bad?
Yeah.
Like, to be fair, I knew it was bad going in, and I hadn't seen it since, like,
way
middle
back.
school.
Yeah, back when we thought it was kind of cool.
I mean, to be fair, the animation's not bad. No, the people are rough, but everything else around it's pretty good.
And, like, the people are rough, but, like, they're almost charming.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that bad, and then you continue to watch and you're like, no, this is pretty bad.
So I was actually going to bring up some of that too, because can we really consider it a video game adaptation if it's a continuation of the story?
See, that's where it gets a little weird, because then there's other ones that, like, there is no plot. I'm thinking of Angry Birds now 1 and 2, unfortunately.
I forgot that they made that into a movie.
Arguably, the movie's more entertaining than the game, though. The game is just a puzzle. It's a puzzle phone game, and they made it into a whole movie.
I will tell you that Super Nintendo, or that NES ripoff that you gave me.
Yes.
It has a 8-bit demake of Angry Birds.
Hell yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, bootleg shit.
But yeah, I don't know. It falls into that weird gray area, because I recently also picked up Kingsglaive for Final Fantasy 15.
Yes.
And I'd known that there was an anime adaptation as well.
Okay.
Which, it's kind of, I don't know, I just don't know how to categorize them, because even like...
Well, it'd be a little bit like if, heaven forbid, they ever made a Kingdom Hearts movie.
Oh, don't.
I
don't even want to think about them trying to make a consistent movie.
Well, that's the thing, though. Like, visually, stylistically, it would make it's primed to be a successful movie. It's got the fan base, the art style would translate well. It's got the depth and breadth, but, like, we've already seen them attempt to do every other thing with Kingdom Hearts. I don't know if I'd be interested.
Yeah,
I like I like the dumb parts of Kingdom Hearts. I just can't get through some of the weird games, like the card-based one.
Oh no. Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, is like, and I think they have the same issue with. In that regard, yes, I would consider them a video game adaptation, because they're taking elements. I think they're more so what I actually want to see a video game adaptation be like, where they're taking the elements from the IP
Yes.
and putting them into its own environment or in continuing the story. So in some regards, those are probably the better remakes.
And I put down as an honorable mention, and I think this movie does just that.
Mm-hmm.
It's Wreck-It Ralph. It's not really about the video game part itself. It's just using the characters and the worlds as a backdrop for its own story.
Yeah.
Which I liked a lot. And like some of the video games are based off of real old arcades.
Yeah.
And then some of them are total bullshit and made up, and that's fine, because it just is representing a genre.
Yeah.
Which works, because I don't really care about the details of that character.
Yeah.
It's its own thing.
No, and I think Wreck-It Ralph probably has been the most successful video game related.
Yes.
And especially crossover, because it blends so much.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen Ready Player One yet.
Fair, but yeah, that's going to be a new one, because we're starting to see that more and more. And like, example being Sword Art Online, that has a huge cult following. I mean, people really like it and all of its adaptations, and so I wouldn't be surprised if a movie was, especially a live action movie, was in the works. But yeah, our video game, like alternate reality headset wearing, because that's also that's not new. We've seen that before.
No,
but like I've never considered it a video game. But I guess if I was to like go out and buy it, like it's an Oculus Rift, it's a video game.
Yeah, and I was also thinking along the same lines of where like adaptations or iterations of things that have been based around specifically card games and board games has been anime.
This is true.
Specifically with, like, any of the card games. I don't...
Yeah, most of the card game ones have been...
Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Masters, but the only one I can think of that's actually based off a board game is Hakuro no Go.
Oh.
Or Hikaru no Go, that's right.
Which, for those of you who are not in the darkness of the weeb franchises we are, it's based off of Go, the game, which is a Japanese traditional, like, chess, checkers sort of game. Strategy based.
Yeah, it's a strategy game.
Yeah.
I read it for a bit.
I did too. I don't know why I read it. I have no connection to the game Go. I have no idea how to play it, but yet I was so enthralled with them holding the pieces like they were ninja darts and slamming them down onto the table, and I was like, that's so cool. Well, it's not cool, it's stupid.
Yeah, and I read it because I like Takashi Obata's artwork. That's the only reason I read it.
Yeah, it was beautifully done, and I think I watched the show for a little while, because, like, I had friends who were really into it, they liked the characters. It was about the same time that, like, for me and my friend group, Fruit Baskets was really popular.
Okay.
And, like, I liked the characters from Fruit Baskets, but I could not stand the amount of, like, oh my god, he's the one. No, this one's the perfect boy. Oh, I can't decide between them all. I couldn't take it anymore. And this is coming from someone whose favorite anime is Ranma 1/2. So, like, I watched Go instead, and I got terribly bored.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's part of the issue too. Is like family style board games do take
forever
time, and
we've seen, especially like we like to play board games with our friends, and 99% of the board games that we choose to play are not board games in the traditional sense. Like no one's pulling Monopoly out at friends' night. We should.
I've tried to get you guys to play my Zelda version of it.
And I have tried on numerous occasions to get people to learn some of the, like, board games from the 1960s that I think look hella fun. And y'all are like, Christine, this takes forever to learn and forever to set up. And it's a 2-hour-long board game. No.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it's just also, like, the recognizable pieces.
That's very true, because I think most of us, the family board game genre kind of ends after you're not a little kid. And I mean, like, real little, like, Go Fish level.
Yeah.
Because, like, at that point, your attention, like, those games are so short, it doesn't matter. Like, I think the last time I played Candyland with one of my, like, with one of the kids I was babysitting, I think it took a grand total of 5 minutes. And 4 of those minutes were arguing with them that I had won.
I was drunk in Micah's apartment in Lincoln.
Yeah, like, it takes no time at all, even if, like, you don't get the best roll or card draw or whatever. Like, they take hardly any time to play.
Yeah.
There's minimal pieces. And then once you get older, for most people, there's, like, a huge gap between, like, baby board games and then, like, full-on adult board games. Because, like, my husband and I have, like, heavy hitter board games. Like, our favorite one is Mice and Mystics.
Yeah.
It takes forever to set up. Every time a chapter changes, it takes forever to reset up. If you need to, heaven forbid, leave to go to bed or something, you have to have a table to leave this bad boy out for days. We still haven't finished it.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's no, like, in-between thing, which honestly is the prime target age for a board game-based movie group.
And I think maybe it's when you take the source material of the game and then you turn it into something more like a role-playing.
Yeah, which
unfortunately that still ends up around, like, other similar genres, and it just becomes muddled. Like, if anyone tried making, like, a Monopoly movie, I'd immediately compare it to Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, for sure. And, like, honestly, like, who's to say Wolf of Wall Street wasn't a loose Monopoly-based movie, other than the fact that the board game's not in it?
Well, it's also based off a real guy,
yeah,
so,
but
yeah.
Like, maybe that was his inspiration in life. He hung the Monopoly board up in his room as a kid, and he's like, I'm gonna be that guy.
I have no clue.
I don't know either. But, like, at the same time, before we started recording, you and I were looking at, like, fake movie posters for fake ones, like, example being Hungry Hungry Hippos. Someone has beautifully photoshopped in, like, a fake, kind of like Crawl or Jaws-esque style water-based horror where it's a hungry hippo.
Yes.
And, like, it's funny because, like, hippos, while they are terrifying in real life, are also the, like, most hilarious animal ever. They don't swim, they bounce along the bottom of the river. They literally have propeller fart poop that is on purpose. Like, they look like fat cows. They have squishy little feet and fat noses. And yes, they will kill you, but, like, in an adorable way.
No.
I know in real life, but, like, put that in movie context.
Yeah.
And, like, write it out and be like, now you have to be fearful of the pooping hippo. It loses its edge. It's not as scary as a crocodile who you don't think about having to poop.
Yeah, because, I mean, that is one thing. I mean, I'm being a little maybe pedantic about it just because hippos are...
They are, like, statistically terrifying.
Yeah.
And, like, we don't have hippos here, though. Like, there is no, like, real-world connection to hippos being scary.
Yeah, and...
There's not a hippo for miles.
No, not at all. But, I mean, some of the other stuff we were looking at was, like, Candyland, which...
It could be cool. Like, the world of Candyland's
but
pretty
we've
dope.
also kind of already seen in, like, Wreck-It Ralph, too, with Glitch, whatever her name was.
Yeah, the glitchy child, yeah. Well, like, she has a candy-themed racing track, but, like, I could also see Candyland taking, like, a Tim Burton-esque twist.
Yeah.
Which could be really cool. And, like, yeah, the premise is simple, but it's got the characteristics we talked about earlier. It's got recognizable characters. Granted, I'm sure no one remembers any of their names anymore, but, like, you would recognize them.
Or on top of that, recognizable landscapes.
It has definitely got recognizable landscapes.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, yeah, for most of us who are, like, don't have young children in the house, we quickly have forgotten Candyland, but, like, the second you have a kid, Candyland shows up in your house. Even if you don't buy it. It just is there, and, like, then you're forced to relearn who, like, Candy Randy or whatever his name is.
Candy Randy is from Good Mythical Morning.
I know. I miss Candy Randy. He has yet to make an appearance this season, and I am a little sad.
Damn.
But, or, like, there's another one that's been photoshopped in for us beautifully is Chutes and Ladders, the horror movie edition. And, like, maybe it's, like, the mansion has trapdoors, and, like, then it's, like, a mix between Saw and also the terrible mansion in Chicago.
Oh, the H.H. Holmes murder mansion?
Yeah, like maybe like it's a murder mansion / Saw sort of scenario.
A murder mystery, but...
Yeah.
And that's the thing, I think...
And, like, it could be cool, but, like, also, that's a huge could be, and the people playing Chutes and Ladders are not the same audience who are going to go see a horror Chutes and Ladders movie.
Yeah, and... I think that's the hardest thing, too, also, is adapting it to an adult audience.
Yes.
Which is why Clue, I think, did better, because Clue, for me growing up, even though I never played it, I always felt Clue was a more mature game. It
has a little bit more strategy to it. Like, granted, it's still, like, easy enough for kids to play, but yeah, if you wanted to wipe the floor with your baby cousin, you pick Clue, because you know how to strategize better than them. And, like, the other thing that worked well for Clue that... And Jumanji did this too, but again, Jumanji's not based off of a real board game. the humor in Clue and the quick-witted lines are adult-targeted.
Yeah.
There are definitely lines that, like, would fly over a kid's head. They have no idea what was just said, and there's not even, like, a laugh track for them to catch it.
Yeah.
Or to know that that was supposed to be a thing. But for an adult, you catch all those bits. But there's no blood. There's no... Like, there's a body, but it's clearly a human pretending to be dead.
Yeah.
So, like, there's nothing in it that's, like, little kid off the line, except maybe if you were really concerned about your kids seeing some top boob.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of top boob, but other than that, like, it's a pretty family-friendly movie.
Yeah, and tangentially, it goes back to, or tangentially, it reminds me of the movie Game Night.
Yes.
Where it's very role-play-esque.
And I think part of the reason why Battleship didn't succeed is because of the military-esque nature of it, while it has similar features to the movie Clue, where, like, I don't remember and it's been a while since I've seen this movie, but, like, I don't remember there being a ton of bits in it that I was like, oh gosh, this is not for little kids.
Yeah.
But also, like, most little kids are not interested in a war-esque style movie.
Yeah.
Even if it is a more modern one with giant alien robots. Most kids are like, meh.
Yeah, well, and I think maybe that's why, like, for us, even though we know it's a bad movie now, the first Dungeons and Dragons holds out so well because...
Like, yeah, it's bad, but, like, I have fun with it every time I watch it.
Yeah, exactly. Ripley and Snail.
Yeah, and, like, honestly, same thing with every time I've played Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I'm not a good Dungeons and Dragons player. I don't have time to be good at it. But, like, every time I play it, I have a good time.
Yeah, and so, like, for me, like, the second one is, to me, feels like Dungeons and Dragons in name alone.
Yes.
Where
the concept's there, but it's missing the humor, I think.
Yeah, and, well, it's completely missing the humor.
Yeah.
And it's a sequel that doesn't really fit into anything. It just feels like it was another side campaign that they just threw people at.
Especially now that we're seeing...
It took itself too seriously.
It did. It took itself too seriously, which is too bad because, like, we're seeing a huge, like, resurgence to Dungeons and Dragons. There's a ton of both podcasts and YouTube videos and even live performances of groups of people who, like, they just play Dungeons and Dragons for you to watch. And they're not like short little episodes. Like, these multiple hours, like days worth of content for one campaign. So clearly people enjoy it. Clearly people want the story plus the weird humor plus the quirky characters. And so, like, that's all a recipe for a good movie. But, like, yeah, Dungeons and Dragons, you can't take yourself too seriously. Otherwise, like, at least not everyone in the campaign needs to take themselves seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of where the movie missed, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just think when we talked about Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, that's a good example.
I don't think we're getting close to hitting that happy medium.
Because Detective Pikachu was damn good.
Yeah.
It was great. And granted, it's not a direct one-to-one video game, but, like, it is. All of the characters are from the video games.
Yeah, like we talked about, it has everything that I actually personally would want to see in a live-action adaptation is, one, it's its own thing. Same with, like, anime movies.
Oh, yeah, like, a lot of anime movies, especially the ones that are, like, fuck the plot of the original concept. Now they're all in Narnia. Yeah. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and back to Detective Pikachu, it's got the recognizable characters.
It does.
It has a new world.
Yes, but it fits in.
It fits in.
It's not so new that you're like, the fuck is this shit?
Yeah, it's crafted to what's already there.
Yep.
And it does its own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that also is, I think, why Sonic the Hedgehog, while it wasn't my favorite movie of all time, wasn't bad.
No, it really wasn't.
And it did very similar things. Like, yeah, the character is recognizable, but we don't harp on all of the old video game versions of Sonic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's reintroducing him in the movie context.
And I think maybe that's the issue, too, is these adaptations we're seeing are, or at least some of the ones that are coming out now, are based off of very simple games, like with the new Mortal Kombat coming out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a very basic concept, and it's taking those iconic images and creating something new with it.
Yeah, and even if you haven't played Mortal Kombat, you at least recognize the characters as my mom say, one of those Street Fighters?
Yes.
Yeah. So, like, while you may not be super familiar with it or even know any of their names,
Mm-hmm.
you have a gist of what's going on. You
Yeah.
know, like, okay, they're all unnecessarily OP. They're gonna fight some people.
Yeah.
Probably gonna be some blood, maybe.
Mortal Kombat 1 has no blood.
I know, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like, it is nice. Like, it felt of the time, I think.
Yeah, I didn't know that, because granted, I hadn't seen it in a long time, but until the Angry Video Game Nerd pointed out that...
No blood.
No.
No blood, which, cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? And I kind of had this discussion with my husband before coming over, because he's the one who powers through video games much faster than I do. And he also plays new games. I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on my PS2. I'm still playing Harry Potter 3.
I'm going back to PS2 as well soon. I'm going to be playing Persona 4. So.
Yeah, yes, I have the new consoles, and I do have newer games, but, there's so much content out there.
Yeah.
And I have a very low tolerance for, when I'll put a game... I will play a game that's terrible to the end of the game and be like, that wasn't that bad, even if the game is legit garbage.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part... Well...
So, I am still, walking my way through all of these old systems, whereas he's playing a bunch of new stuff. He got done playing the new God of War and, worked his way backwards through them instead of starting at the first one.
Jeez.
And then was upset that they weren't as good as the newest one.
Yeah.
But, when I was talking to him about this, he was like, oh, a God of War movie would be great. And then he stopped and went, actually, no, I don't want it.
Yeah, exactly. But on the other hand, my brother played through Uncharted, and he's kind of excited for the movie.
Yeah, and so I think it depends a little bit, I think, on you can't just pick the most popular video game that's currently out. Uncharted, it has the potential because the world is there. And it's, granted, focused on one character.
Yeah.
But the world is cool.
Yeah, well...
Whereas God of War, the world is cool, but also, it's just our world, but with the old gods.
Yeah, and
so,
we have a bunch of other fantasy movies around that stuff, too.
it'd be way too similar to, any of the other ones.
As much as I loved Ghost of Tsushima and could easily see that one probably in most recent times being adapted into a movie.
Very much so, but
I don't want to.
No.
I want to...
I want people to find all of the old Japanese movies that this is based off of.
No, it made me want to go back and watch all my old samurai movies, which I actually have started watching some of my newer ones that I picked up that I'm finally getting around to.
Perfect. And there's a lot of them like that. Example, the Assassin's Creed movie, the games work because they can build off of a random time period. Pick a point in history and you've got a game. Because the concept is all that really matters. Yeah. Whereas theoretically that should translate well to a movie, but when you spend so much time trying to appease an audience who's really into a video game, and specifically one of a franchise of video games, it doesn't work as well. We saw the same thing with Prince of Persia. I love the Prince of Persia games. Granted, not all of them are good. In fact, I would argue most of them are not good.
I completely forgot they even made that into a movie.
They did. They made it into a full-on movie.
I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, a lot of us did. And honestly, if I saw Prince of Persia the movie before I played the games. And so I liked the movie. I thought it was fun. I didn't think it was great. But the only thing I compared it to was Aladdin and Sinbad.
You also like bad movies.
I do. I like bad movies. But I don't think it was as bad as a lot of people who at the time were upset with it, because I hadn't played the really good Prince of Persia games.
Well, and I've had the same thing with Assassin's Creed. I've never played an Assassin's Creed game. Yeah. And I actually enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, it was fine, but if you liked the games, you could see the rift too hard. Yeah. And I think that's where the blur line, we're starting to see people starting to figure this out. Like you said, with Detective Pikachu, with Sonic, we're with some argument, Tomb Raider and Mortal Kombat, that there is a blurry line that you need to just kind of wipe clean in the sand before you get your movie franchise started. And just be it's the general concept, but it's also its own thing. And I think for me, the pinnacle of video game movies and downfall of video game movies is the Silent Hill franchise. Yeah, which is too bad, because it could have been
Like, so for me, I think the first movie is everything I want from an adaptation.
Yes, it was fantastic.
And I know a lot of people who love the games absolutely hate the movie.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
Honestly, have a strong opinion one way or the other, especially if it's something you love.
Yeah.
But, we also see that with book adaptations, too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people not a fan of fill-in-blank adaptation.
And, well, for me, the second one ended up being wanting to be too much like the game.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't...
Yeah, you kind of almost have to, full-on pick a side. You can't be one or the other. And then there's also kind of a hard section to pick, too. Because originally, we started off with the board games section of this. And board games, almost always, at least for the ones picked for movies, again, are aimed at kids.
Yeah.
Most of the movies that are video game based are not aimed at kids. Until recently. And I think now that people realize that, what if we didn't pick the super serious one that already had all the plot figured out? What if we, made Yu-Gi-Oh! A movie?
Yeah, I mean,
it's fine. And, adults can have fun with it, too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird genre that's starting to grow more and more, especially as Sega and everyone's starting to make their own studios and make their own adaptations.
I mean, we're not going to see an end to them anytime soon.
No.
I just don't... I have no idea where they're going to go with all this. Because, we see a trend here or there, but, we also see that, those were huge risks, and, we don't know if they felt like it was worth it.
Yeah.
Or repeatable, even.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. And real quick, I do want to bring up one movie that's an outlier that I kind of forgot about until you brought up images of those faked posters.
Yes.
Beyond the Gates.
Yes.
It is a VCR adventure.
It surely is.
One. It's not very good either.
No, but you gotta give it props for the concept.
Exactly.
It's literally a pick your own adventure. In a way.
Yeah.
But, it's as close to being both a movie and a board game as I think we've come so far.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see where this genre is going. I don't think we'll see any other board games, because even Jumanji's jumped that ship.
Yeah, Jumanji, their most recent one, they ditched the board game aspect and turned it into a video game, which makes sense.
Yeah.
No one... Again, the age range of people who are, gonna drag you to the movies, they aren't playing board games.
Yeah, and I think board games in general are kind of dying out a bit, unless you're, doing Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of stuff.
There is a hard-hitting group in the shadows who love board games, and they play board games, but they are not the board games that most people are familiar with.
Okay.
They're, there's different genres of them. Some of them are solely into ones that take hours and days and days and days to play, and then we're also seeing a bunch of people who realize we don't have to, we can just play 10 minutes of the bigger, blacker box.
Yeah.
So board games are still out there, but I think people have, for the most part, changed how they see them, and most people aren't playing them
Video games have taken the forefront.
Yeah, and on top of that, your choices used to be kind of limited to whatever Hasbro felt like giving to you, Monopoly, Clue. There's so many independent creators who are making amazing board games that you can kind of pick whatever you want to play, whatever style, genre that you like, just like video games. The sky's the limit.
Yeah.
You just have to find it.
Okay.
And it's so much easier now. So, I don't think board games themselves are going to be movie-based material, but definitely video games, for sure, and we will never see the end of them, I think.
No, I don't think so either. And so, with that, if you could have one video game adapted into a live action...
I have thought about this long and hard. I freaking love Sly Cooper. Is based off of a raccoon who is a master thief, and he goes around stealing from other thieves, and because he's a raccoon, there's no one to, like, there's no style to emulate.
I thought there was one in the works, not a live action, but a animated adaptation.
I think there was. I don't know what happened to it. I've played the most recent game. It was fine. It was good. It was better than some of the other ones, but I don't know if the passion for Sly Cooper is out there enough for people to, like, make it into a movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. For me personally, because the only games I played recently are Tsushima and Death Stranding. Like I said, I don't think Tsushima should be adapted into a movie. Although I think it could be, especially with, like, if they take the concept of the Legends mode where it's more horror-based.
Yeah,
I think that could be cool. But Death Stranding is so narrative-based, and I don't want any side story outside of it.
Yeah, it would take away.
The only reason I'd want it is to get rid of all the extra crap in it. But, like, off the top of my head, probably destroy all humans.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Yeah.
That could be really cool.
But at the same time, I don't...
who would watch the movie? Like, I don't know how many people would be interested enough to get it off the ground.
Exactly. I honestly, I feel it would have to be something like Skyrim, where you're taking
for sure.
any character and just
putting them in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, that could be cool.
But I do know that they ran into issues with that with Monster Hunter.
True.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's awful.
Same. I'll have to get to it eventually.
Yeah, and I think that was, if I remember right, the director mentioned that was the whole point of Mia Jovanovic as the main character. She was supposed to resemble the player character.
Yeah. So yeah.
I don't know.
There is no winning.
No.
Only losing. Only bad movies.
Game over, man. Game over, man.
Yeah. For 99% of these, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I guess that's our covering of video game and maybe board game adaptation movies, or just the genre in general.
The genre in general. Is it one that I'm gonna, keep my eye closely on? No. But I mean, if they came out with more board game based video movies, I might watch it.
Of course you would.
Sorry.
Yes. Well, sorry, real quick before we end it. What about escape rooms?
I don't think they qualify as a board game. I know you can buy board game escape rooms, but like I think the real huge appeal of escape, like the actual escape rooms that you like go to and pay money, at least for me, because I've been to a wide variety and styling and price points, a lot of it comes down to like the creativity of the puzzle master himself, and then the theming that goes into it.
So it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons in that regard.
Very much so, but like much more budget and a lot more time put into like making things that I'm potentially going to break by trying to take it off the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So, anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.